So in terms of today's session, what I'm going to talk on, I normally pick kind of 3 topics. 3 is generally quite a good number. The first one is actually about if you ever feel overwhelmed. This is especially true for freelancers and solopreneurs. And actually, you know what? I'm just going to jump straight into this one. Where is my pens? I packed my pens away. See, you'd almost think I was prepared, but luckily I have a small office, so actually I can kind of jump in. So actually, when you feel unprepared as an entrepreneur, often it can be quite, sorry, I phrased that wrongly. It's when you feel overwhelmed. And this, okay, so the context of this segment is to do with entrepreneurship, but actually it's kind of true with your career as well. But obviously in a paid job, you have holidays as well. Often as a freelancer or a solopreneur, you don't, you kind of work for yourself. So I had a chat with a lady this week who has a very successful business. Arguably too successful, and what had essentially happened was that she was getting so much work thrown at her that she didn't feel like she could turn it down. But actually she had some other people kind of let her down. And what happened was she was just working crazy hours every single day. She didn't want to let anyone down. And just for the sake of argument, I'm going to throw some figures at this just to, give it some context. But it was almost that one of the questions or the things that I made out to her is that a lot of freelancers almost struggle with how much do you charge, because you want to be competitive and be rewarded for your services, but you also don't want to be too expensive that it kind of excludes you from anything. So what in this example, I'm going to make up these figures, but it could apply to anyone. So if you're a freelancer and you charge £20 an hour, it could well be that you do really well and actually you get fully booked and you're happy and you choose to do that for, say, I'm going to say, you want to do 40 hours a week. So actually based on that, you kind of build quite a successful business. You're happy, things go well. But what then happens if you're offered more clients or more work starts to come in? It gets to the point where that 40 becomes 70, and then suddenly oh God, I can't work 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, so I need to bring in help. And sometimes people let you down, and obviously you have things to pay them, and that's almost where it's very easy to get into a hamster wheel where you're working really hard, arguably to stand still, and you're no real further forward from where you were at £20 an hour working 40 hours. Then in theory, yes, you're turning over more money, you're bringing in more revenue based on 70 hours a week, but because your costs have really gone up to pay for other people, the benefit versus the hassle and stress isn't really worth it for a lot of people. And then likewise, it's when those people let you down, you end up picking up the work anyway, and the whole thing was just an absolute nightmare. So one of the things that I recommended to the lady in question was that actually, if you're, as a freelancer especially, if you ever feel overwhelmed, put your prices up. And my point to her was, why not go from £20 to £30 an hour? If you assume that she has £10 an hour worth of costs, what you've then got is that here, a £10 cost, you're making £10 profit. But actually, if you put your price up to £30 an hour, in theory, you're actually making £20 an hour profit per hour. But the important thing is that as a person, especially as a freelancer, and I understand this because I do this myself, you still need enough money to live off. So although your number of customers will no doubt drop, it might not drop, but I think it will drop from the amount of work that you're doing actually at £20 an hour. So people might not be able to afford 30, but the point is, I would almost bet my house that you will lose some, but you won't lose many, that actually you only have to work half as many hours to actually make the same amount of money per week. I don't think you're going to lose 50% of your customers, but the whole point is that if you ever feel overwhelmed and you've got so much stuff going on that actually you're not sure how to cope, almost to the point where you're thinking about quitting what you do, although it sounds counterintuitive, try putting your prices up. Don't go crazy, because otherwise you might lose everyone. But almost, for a common sense price that you can always bounce ideas off people, just the simple idea of actually putting your prices up will reduce the amount of workload, but actually you're better rewarded for the work that you do. And a common issue for freelancers and stuff is actually a way to, people do burn out, they do overwork. So it's just something that I wanted to share and talk about, something to think about, that actually, never be afraid to put your prices up if you're flat out busy and actually, or you're just not really enjoying it. Because worst case, well, you lose the customers, you're not enjoying it anyway. But best case, you get at least better rewarded for it, but you might find a better kind of work-life balance. So that was the first one I wanted to talk about today. Basically, a lot of people do feel overwhelmed, so I wanted to almost give a real-life example of ways to do that. And then the other way to mitigate it as well is that if you have some anchor clients which pay your bills and you don't want to piss them off and you want to keep them long term, you don't have to put their price up. But for new work or customers that you don't mind losing or whichever, it's that kind of decision that you don't have to charge everyone 30, but it's just how you can manage your website and what you do as well. I do this for myself. So my consultancy is kind of sold out because, again, it's just kind of me. That when on my website I have my rates and stuff, because I still want to advertise them, the more busy I get, the higher I put the price, because the truth is I don't want to do any more work. But then likewise, if someone did want to hire me, I get rewarded better for it, if that makes sense. So it's just an interesting concept that I wanted to kind of talk about.